This is the new Garmin D2 Delta PX Ultimate Aviator watch with pulse oximeter, and brand new this will cost you 1,849 Australian dollars. Now this watch has been sent to me by the kind team. This watch has been given to me by the kind team at Australian Aviation Magazine. They're actually giving 3 of these away as part of a subscription offer, which I'll tell you about. So I have to send this back, and that's why it's still got like the plastic on it, and I'm supposed to be very careful and not put it in the wet grass here in Albert Park. So I want to test if this is the best watch that you can buy if you are a pilot, if you're into your aviation, if you just want a really cool smart watch for things like running and exercise as well. How good does this watch actually perform? But this is really optimized for the pilot market, and it does have something called a pulse oximeter built into it as well, which actually determines your oxygen saturation levels in your bloodstream. And we're going to test that in flight shortly. But is this watch any good? This comes in 3 different sizes. What are they? There's a 42, a 47 and a 51mm face. If you want the pulse oximeter, you have to buy the 51mm face. That's the most expensive one, and that's the one with this titanium band as well. The other smaller ones have like a smaller leather strap that you can get. Also, who is this designed for? Straight out of the box. Like, I don't have the smallest wrists in the world, but I realize this isn't a long-term solution. So what do you get in the box? Now this watch has a ton of features, things like Garmin Pay, all the GPS functionality in here, flight planning, METARs, which is some of your meteorological information like your weather forecast. There is a lot that this watch can do, which I'm not going to be able to demonstrate in this video, but I want to give you a bit of a high level of like the key features that you probably would use on this watch if you were a pilot, and preferably if you do fly with other Garmin devices in your cockpit, like Garmin Pilot on your iPad, and maybe things like the Garmin GTN 650s or 750s, or basically it's a bit like Apple, you know, the more Garmin stuff you use, the better your experience is going to be overall. Now straight off the bat, this is not a sponsored video. In fact, just like Bose Aviation, I have reached out to Garmin in the past and nothing. They haven't got back to me. There's no word on sponsoring the channel. They didn't want to give me free product. So not sponsored by Garmin, unless you want to get on board Garmin. Therefore, this is going to be a very frank and a very honest review of whether this watch is any good. It is really, I do like it. So of course there's only one way to truly test a watch that's designed for flying. Inside Echo Yankee Zulu, of course. So I thought what we'd do is take a quick flight with the Garmin D2 watch just to see what it can do actually in the aircraft. I have a special guest on board as well. Hi Shannon.
Hi.
Shannon is one of the instructors at Air RTP, so she's going to be my safety pilot, extra pair of eyes today, just helping me out with the flight because I'm going to be fiddling around with technology, and I figured that's probably not the safest thing to do whilst trying to fly an airplane at the same time. Now the Garmin D2 does obviously connect through to Garmin Pilot on your iPad as well. It takes a while to set this up, so don't just jump in your plane with your brand new watch and think you can set it all up whilst you're sitting here in the cockpit. It took me about 15 minutes to basically download the apps. You have to download something called Garmin Connect, which is the app that you use on your iPad to tell your watch to talk to the iPad before it can talk to Garmin Pilot. So you need Garmin Connect and Garmin Pilot both on the iPad before you can start transferring flight plans between your iPad and your watch. But once that's done, then it's relatively straightforward after that to sync flight plans between your iPad and your watch, which is what we did on the ground just now. Loaded a very quick flight plan to the south, clicked on the Garmin Connect icon at the top, and then that syncs it directly through to your watch.
Echo Yankee Zulu, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, Echo Yankee Zulu. Alright, so as we're climbing out now, Shannon's got control of the aircraft now, so we're climbing up to about 4,500. It knows that Moorabbin, where we've departed from, is our nearest airport. It gives me a bearing to it, so bearing of 355. Would you concur that's about right? It's kind of north of us.
Yeah.
It's kind of that direction. 3 minutes to Moorabbin from here. It's got the track that we're currently on the distance, so 8.2 nautical miles from Moorabbin as well. So that's kind of useful, I suppose. So then there's the basic moving map on here as well, where you've got some pretty basic It's a little bit fiddly with the buttons, but you can zoom in and out, you can pan left and right, so you can see basically where you are around you. So that's running off the GPS on the watch, but it concurs with what's going on the moving map that we've got here on the Aviator display as well. That's kind of fun.
That's quite cool,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's kind of
I don't
cool.
know why you'd need it, but it's cool.
I think that's going to be like the summary of the review. I don't know why you need it. And one thing I really want to try and hear is, I know you can do a direct to a waypoint using your watch, but I want to know if that can sync through to the avionics here in the aircraft. So basically, can you steer the airplane with your Garmin watch? I'm kind of hoping you can't, because I think if you kind of bang
really
your watch,
concerning.
it would be, wouldn't it? If you just lean on it all of a sudden, yeah.
Someone in the back seat has the watch on.
Alright, we're going to go direct, see if it goes direct to Karen.
1020.
So C,
Clear direct to Robin 4.
A, and enter. Alright, so that's done direct to camera on the watch. But I didn't do it. So what I think happens is you can do a direct to, so we put in Karen, which is over there, but it doesn't actually, and you know, if you know better, if you've used this watch and you have done that before, let me know in the comments. But what it sort of does is it tells you the direct to, it gives you the track, the timings, etc., how to get to that waypoint, but it won't then send it through to your flight plan, which I don't disagree isn't not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Alright, next test. I want to quickly, before we get back to Morambi, I want to test the pulse oximeter on here as well, because as you know, if you watch the channel, I've now got the oxygen bottle here in Echo Yankee Zulu. Alright, so oxygen saturation level on my finger pulse oximeter, which I've used for a while now, is 97%. And on the Garmin D2, so that's saying 95%. So 97, 95%, it could have changed by a percentage or two in between the time it took. That did take about a minute or two just to read here on the watch, but pretty close. And look, that is useful, because carrying that finger-based pulse oximeter around with you is just another thing that you have to bring. Having that actually on your watch, I will say, especially if you are flying in higher altitudes, obviously, that is pretty useful. Gonna be in the thumbnail? No. Be in the thumbnail, be in the thumbnail. Ready? One other cool thing about this watch is once you've landed, just like when you've been recording exercise, you can stop it and it will track that flight through to your Garmin logbook, so it keeps a digital copy of every flight you do with the watch. Alright, so is this watch worth 1,849 Australian dollars? Well, to answer that question, yes, it's worth that amount of money, I would say, because for what it can actually do, like for all the GPS navigation functions it has, for all the exercise tracking it has, for all the customization you can put on there, the syncing to do with things like Garmin Pilot that you saw, the pulse oximeter, all of that, like it has a ton of features and so many that I haven't actually talked about in this video. So for what it can do, is it worth the money? Yeah, but do you need a watch like this as a pilot? Well, if you're a student pilot and you're just starting out, no. Don't spend $1,849 on a watch. Spend $1,849 on flight training and fuel and taking your exams. If you're a middle hour pilot and you're just flying for fun, then maybe, look, it's a fun watch. It's a good toy. It's a nice gadget, but it is expensive, and you can use watches like my Forerunner 935 for things like UTC time and tracking your exercise. You obviously don't have the GPS functionality and all the aviation stuff like pulse oximeter in here, but you can still do a lot with the smartwatches and the other branded smartwatches that are out there on the market anyway. And then for the experienced pilot who maybe does fly with Garmin products, you know, like your 650s and your Garmin Pilot on your iPad, it really is the best solution in terms of a watch that integrates with all of those other features. So in itself, excellent watch with really good features, but you have to decide, do you want to spend that money on something like this or learning to fly something like this? Okay, apparently I have to give this back to Australian Aviation now.